What up, y'all? It's your boy Ben here, and I'm actually really excited to dive into today's video because why not theory test, why not deck test a little bit with the cards that we know that are already coming into the game. That's right, we're gonna go through every single one, name like that one Pokemon that we know feels right, feels like the perfect partner for it, and I'm truly excited for what's to come once we hit December 17th. Alright, y'all know what to do. Hit that like button, subscribe. We're gonna hit 10,000 before the end of the year, and with that out of the way, let's dive in. So our first card here is Mew EX. Psyshot, Geno hacking, 3 energy, Psyshot is 1. I think the perfect mon for this would be Gardevoir. You slot this into like that full Mewtwo deck. It's pretty sweet because we've seen time and time again that with Mewtwo, with having 4 energy and needing to attack, there are times where you can easily ramp up that with Gardevoir. And if you're ramping up something like Geno hacking with Gardevoir, you are doing whatever you want, you know what I'm saying, and you're doing it very quickly. And so I think that part is pretty sweet. I think Gardevoir would be the perfect pair to add to this mon. Up next we have Aerodactyl EX, and its new ability, the new shiny toy. Your opponent can't play any Pokemon from their hand to evolve their active Pokemon. I know that was gonna pick one like mon that like makes this like really good, or like one card that makes this really good, but I have a couple. So like I'm gonna cheat a little bit, but Sabrina, Pidgeot, and Arbok. Arbok is a stage 1 mon. Pidgeot is a stage 2. Aerodactyl doesn't need like, you just have the fossil, and then you can attach that on there as well. Just those combinations of being able to control this feels like a full control deck, right? Being able to control what's in the front, what's not in the front, bringing in their bench Pokemon, not allowing them to evolve. If they're trying to retreat, you have the Arbok to take them away. And I think this is now like really starting to really make a good archetype of like control that we like, people are like messing around with like the Weezing, but this really feels like, hey, I'm gonna make sure that the Pokemon that you want in the active spot, it ain't gonna be there. I'm gonna choose what I want to be in there, and that feels pretty good. So our next mon up here is Execute. Now now I want you to take this journey with me, and I think the actual perfect partner for this Pokemon is Greninja. Now you're probably wondering, what are you talking about? Why would that be the case? Because of Growth Spurt, now that I'm thinking about it, you can run dual energy, or you can just run water energy, and you'll be able to take grass and now be able to attack, and now you have as consistent. The Executor EX or Executor like basic pairs perfectly with Greninja. They are tanks. They need just 1 energy to attack, or like 1 grass energy to attack. So all you need to do is get 1 energy on there. So you attach a water energy, you attack, you then get a grass energy, and now you're set up to evolve and then now start attacking. That's it. And that feels pretty good. So like, let's say you have energy advantage, you get to attach that, attack, and then you get to go. So like, you can kind of play with both to see which one you use. But if you're like only running water, you run this, you build up your wall, you get to build up your pieces, and having 2 Greninjas online behind such a high HP mon, that feels really strong. Snivy's here, it's basic 70 HP. You have 2 energies to attack with Vine Whip for 40. I think that we've seen this template with Bulbasaur, like literally has like same HP, same damage for same amount of energy. So like, why not use Lilligant for this? This could be a stage 1, stage 2, following the evolution line. That would make the most sense. I don't think that they would just kind of keep this here because it's all in 1 generation, whereas like some other mons like Rhyhorn and Rhydon, their Rhyperior is in a different gen, Onix Steelix is in a different gen, Snivy and its Servine and Superior are all in its gen. So makes sense for all of them to be here. Why not start building up that energy in the back line with Lilligant, so that way you can attack. We've seen like a Venusaur Lilligant build up, and so that could be pretty sweet for this. Morlow, like just reading off of it, it seems like it has a high, you know, HP 60. It deals 20 damage. For basics, as basics go, we kind of have that template with like Oddish, Gloom, and like Vileplume, where like as it goes up, it requires more energy. But we do know that this is only a stage 1 because it only has 1 evolution line. So I think this could like run with your typical Executor or your Venusaur EX, depending upon what the Shiinotic does. And Shiinotic like uses Spore, like that's kind of like one of the things that it uses in like in the Pokemon battles. And so like if that's the move that it has and like gets to be here, and let's say you do Spore for 2 but you attack for 40 or you attack for 50, like that, like, or like Frostmoth that attacks for 40, but if we have that templated for grass, you're like, why run that instead of like Vileplume is a full 80 damage. That's double the damage. So like if you want a heavy hitter, that feels pretty good, but to kind of have a second stage do that feels pretty sweet. And I think if you're able to like have Mon sleep, you can stall for Venusaur actually and like build that up in the back. Delmy's here is the grass tank that Executor EX and Venusaur EX deck needed. Those two combinations, I know I'm only gonna say one, but like those two combinations are pretty sweet, and like that is such a strong deck. However, you kind of want another like basic like tank to either build up if you're not opening up with your Executors, right? Like you're building up towards those EXs to do the damage and then to step in. However, if you're able to have high basic mons to do that with, that works. You can also pair this with Lilligant, because Lilligant is another ramp card for grass, and that can easily net you, 2 extra grass energy once Lilligant is up and running per turn for Delmys, and Delmys can come in and start dealing 90, and that can feel pretty good too. Now we move on to Magmar, the fire types, and you just gotta name it. This is a Blaine card. This can go into the Blaine aggro deck, and why I say that it can fit into that deck is you're probably saying like, isn't this just like a worse Ninetales? And that's where I kind of have to say no, because you don't need your pieces in order for this card to be online. Ninetales deals 90 for 2, Magmar deals 80 for 2, so with Blaine you're dealing 110, which is a strong point here as well. And like you do lose your 2 fire energy, but it's a basic Pokemon, so you kind of do need a drawback in order to deal all of that damage without being an EX mon. And so will it see play? Maybe not. Like people don't like discarding all of the energy and you're basically starting over again. Maybe you also use Moltres EX with this as well, so that way that ramp goes, and now Moltres EX and Blaine make more sense together because you're running this style Magmar. So maybe you have Magmar, maybe you have the Arcanines, and now you can play with different kind of fire ramp cards, because Magmar also now adds a huge damage boost to that archetype. Larvesta's pretty sweet here. I think the last mon that we see in that fire typing with 2 energy attack would be Growlithe, but that only has 70. You have Salazzle that has 90 HP, but it's a stage 1 mon, so like a basic mon with 80 HP. Combustion is for 2 energy. I'm definitely using Moltres, so with this card, let's get that energy up there right away if we can, because Volcrona is probably going to require either 3rd energy or 4th energy to attack, and being able to get that energy out early is pretty good. It also can serve by itself as like a mini tank. It definitely can survive 1 hit to begin with, and so if you have the energy advantage, you definitely can start dealing things and putting pressure on it because you can live for longer. So I think Moltres to speed that up definitely will help, especially because it does evolve into Volcrona, and we can see what Volcrona does once we get more info on those cards and how that builds out. Now let's get into like one of the probably scariest cards that we're seeing here. Definitely one of those cards that like had a lot of reactions to on like the comments and on like Twitter and or X or whatever you call it, and that's Vaporeon, right? So its ability, as often as you like during your turn, you may move a water energy from one of your bench water Pokemon to your active Pokemon. I read this as saying like, if I have 3 bench Pokemon, because it's as often as you like during your turn, I can move 1 energy from my leftmost, 1 energy from my rightmost, 1 energy from my center, and 1 energy from my bottom. So like if I have 3 bench Pokemon, because it's as often as you like during your turn, I can move 1 energy from my leftmost, 1 energy from my rightmost, 1 energy from my center, 1 energy from my middle, and 1 energy from my right. Reason why this is kind of insane is because, one, we now have a means to get Gyarados online. You can do the following. You can have your Lapras out that like is 100 HP. You hit it with Misty, you roll whatever you need to roll or don't, but then you have that energy, you're attacking, and if it's about to go down, you retreat it, and then you can start moving things out. You're always gonna have energy around, and that's the thing. And so if you are breaking draws, if you can't find your Gyarados, if you can't find your Magikarp, you have time, and by the time that you do, what feels bad is that like you need Misty at that point in the game in order to get there. However, with Vaporeon, that cuts that time down in half. Gyarados will definitely love having Vaporeon. My boy Blastoise 1000% is going to love Vaporeon. He does 40, he does 100, and being able to get that extra energy from the bench, because you do need time to set up, like that's at minimum 3 turns that you need to evolve. That's great. Like I'm not upset about that at all. And Vaporeon only being a stage 1, meaning it's just Eevee and then Vaporeon, you get access to this ability very quick if you're lucky with your draws. There's a Pikachu. That's like data mined. I'm just like putting up like the kind of like the text that's like here, and it's just in the Pikachu deck. I wonder how this will shape out because it feels pretty good. It needs the same setup as Pikachu EX, but the HP is cut in half, 60. The damage is also cut in half. You only get 10 per, so you're dealing, oh no, it's like a third. So you're dealing 10 damage, so you're dealing initially 30, but like that makes sense for a basic Pokemon. That feels about right. And I mean, it's gonna go, and then like this feels like it can also evolve into Raichu. So maybe this replaces the base Pikachu that we've been using, and now you have a good means to attack. So if you have your board set up, you can just use this and like feel good, especially when you are only dealing 20 damage before. Now you can deal 30 only if your bench is filled out, which oftentimes, as we know, already is. The Dedenne is also another mon that will go into the Pikachu EX decks. It's really going to take the place probably of the Pincurchin that's already been in there. However, you have to think about, like, do I want to? Because the HP is at 60. So if the opponent has Giovanni, you're out, right? And like that could happen. And whereas like Pincurchin will survive that. Like will survive an attack through Giovanni, and that stability to give you time for that extra turn is super important. We're going to talk about some training cards that are down below that like could possibly prevent that, but you have to kind of like guess when that's happening. So you know there are going to be times where you draw your first draw as Pincurchin, and like that's all you have, and like that still feels okay because it's still high HP that you can treat. So the Dedenne will fit in there, and so like y'all let me know. It's like, where do y'all see this fitting in? Marshadow, basic mon, 80 HP, revenge, can deal up to 100. I honestly see this pairing up really well with Primate. Now, like the reason why I say this because promo Mankey allows you to already hurt yourself, right? So you're already like losing health that way. Then you get to deal 100, so you're starting to sweep that way, and then when that gets knocked down, you have another mon right away that's gonna deal another 100 damage. Like that's a lot. That's a lot. And once you do the 100 damage, you can retreat and then get another one up there to attack again. Like I think Marshadow decks, you're gonna win a lot of games when it's like 3-2. The score is 3-2, and that's what you should be doing because that takes advantage of this revenge attack. And oftentimes, if you don't want to get to that route, then you should be hitting hard. And if the quickest way and one of the ways that'll make sure that you can set up Marshadow as well is to use your Primate, and I think that's pretty sweet. And especially if your opponent see that this is on the back line, they're gonna think twice about how they should attack because they know that you're gonna be coming in with 100 damage. And our last like confirmed Pokemon card so far is Tauros. Tauros is cooking, and because it is a colorless mon, it can kind of slot into a lot of things. However, you kind of want Tauros with cards that don't require a lot of energy because you are using a lot of energy. So something that this could slot in, like you're thinking about like cards that do this like Executor, you're thinking about cards that do this like Wheezing, you're thinking about cards that you know, even Starmie X that requires 2, you know, so like things that can attack pretty early for low damage, so that way you can then build this up safely in the back while your front line's dealing it. And once your front line goes down or whatever the case may be, you can do this as well. This definitely puts some fears into some hearts into some Pikachu decks once you get this online, because you're only losing 1 point for 120 damage, which is insane. That puts the pedals on Mewtwo decks as well too. That puts the pedal on Moltres as well, so like your fire decks. So this feels pretty good and kind of what we needed if you feel like all you're facing are like the top 3 decks right now, and they are actually feeling like they can get tempered down with the tools that we're getting from these mons. Now we have blue. During your opponent's next turn, all your Pokemon take minus 10 damage from attacks from your opponent's Pokemon. This feels good for a lot of Pokemon, but I think one of the ones that like make the most sense to me are Pokemon that typically will lose out to a Giovanni right away. And like, so cards like Farfetch that loses to Mewtwo when they have their like when they have their Psychic Sphere online, like that 50 damage going to 60, taking that out, that feels good. And you know, so any mons that like are at the 60 that can be taken out right away from those kind of like early attacks, your Ekans, your Cubones that you're like looking to use for your Marowaks or your Arboks, I like that. For this, your Pidgeys, as you're going into your Pidgeots as well, now that you're Pidgeot EX, because you get the survivability, you get to avoid the Giovanni, you get to avoid the early pressure loss because you're like still trying to find your pieces. I think that's sweet. And Leaf! During this turn, the retreat cost of your active Pokemon is 2 less. Snorlax! Snorlax. I think this is a Snorlax card, y'all. Having Snorlax have 4 retreat, and then you'll be able to play this and then save your X speeds for this as well. Like if you're playing Snorlax, you're going to play Leaf, you're going to play double X speed. Now you can swap that out. Now your opponents have to deal with your Snorlax a lot quicker than they were currently, because you drop a Snorlax and people are like, oh, well, you're not going to do nothing, so I'm going to build everything up that I'm going to do, and I'm not going to attack this thing yet. I'm going to attack this thing yet when I know that I have game. And that was kind of like my problem. And I loved using Snorlax as like a means for a wall when I was like trying to set up Blastoise and like do those things. And now with Leaf and him being able to pivot quickly, that's great. Obviously you can use this for anything that has like 2 retreat costs or less for a free pivot for sure. You lose value if it's only a 1, so you want to think about when you're deck building, do I incorporate XP, do I incorporate Leaf, or do I incorporate both? The only caveat to think about with Leaf is that if I play Leaf, I can't play Blue, I can't play Giovanni, I can't play Sabrina, I can't do my Professor's Research. So I think that is the drawback, and I think that's very balanced in that sense. I'm glad that they made that a supporter rather than an item, because that item would have been an auto include in practically all of the decks, even shrinking down how much more cards that we'll see in terms of variety. So yeah, y'all, those were my combos that like I'm already thinking about in like the early deck theory, whatever you want to call it. And my mind gears are turning because the cards are here, and I literally feel like a kid on Christmas. So what do you think? What was your favorite combination? What combinations do you have in mind that are different from mine? I love hearing from you all. Comment sections are great, so please let me know. Without further ado, we'll catch y'all on the next one. Until then, y'all, like, subscribe, get that notification bell, because you want to stay up to date and you'll get all that news information right here. Till next time, y'all, peace.